Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Olipop. If you're not drinking Olipop, you need to do it. It is one of the healthiest, obviously, pops you can drink out there. It has no more than 5 grams of sugar, and you can find them at Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, Sprouts. Those are the places you can do it. Or you can go right now online to Olipop, drinkolipop.com, where you can type in the promo code CHAMPU20 and get 20% off Olipop. So we want to thank them for the sponsor. As I sit here, my name is Brandon Drum. I'm here not with Parker Thune, but with Jesse Crittenton. What's going on, man? This is your first time. Your virginity is done when it comes to YouTube lives, bro.
So this is actually, I guess technically this is my second one. I did one with Parker earlier this summer.
Oh, okay.
However, this is my first one with you, and that is still a
It's
milestone
true.
that I'm excited about.
This is true. So that means if Jesse's here, we're going to talk a lot about fall camp. Yes, we're going to get to your questions about David Stone. We almost joked and said this was going to be a David Stoneless YouTube live, where he could not be talked about, but we also know that your heads would explode and everybody would click away. So anyways, yeah, man, fall camp season starts in 12 days. We got to talk to, trying to think of everybody, Billy Bowman, Jaden Gibson, who else was there today? McKay McGuire and Zach Schmidt. Those were the 4 we got. It was a little bit of a mishap. Tomorrow we're going to get, I believe we're going to get Jeff Levy, and I think we're going to get Tev Roof on top of a bunch of players. So obviously you and I think Brian Clinton will be down there taking care of it tomorrow for us, as I have to do some Little League crap. Yeah. So let's talk about, I think we should start this thing off with fall camp surprises. I think we will get into the David Stone stuff later on into this YouTube live. I know that's what everybody's wanting to talk about, but football season is upon us, folks. We're going to talk some foosball, and we're going to talk about this year, Team 129, and our expectations. I honestly, I want to hear your expectations, Jesse, before we even doing surprises. I want to hear your thoughts on the defense, your thoughts on the offense, and where do you think this team's, I guess, the peak is, and where do you think the floor is for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's the question everybody's asking themselves after a disappointing year last year, right? I have maintained throughout the offseason that the goal should absolutely be making it to the Big 12 title game. Now, making that clear, I'm not saying win. I'm not saying they can't win, but I'm saying make it to the Big 12 title game. That should absolutely be the goal. This team has the talent to do it. But the main question, again, this is what I've talked to a lot of people about. For OU to do that, it's about the defense. The defense was significantly below average in nearly every statistical category last year. If OU wants to get there, I don't actually think they have to have an amazing defense this year. I think that can and will come under Brent Venables. I think the goal this year is to have an average defense. And considering where they were a year ago, it's still a big climb, but I think it's more than manageable. I think this is a 10-win regular season team. That should be the goal, and getting it to the Big 12 title game. I predicted several weeks ago that it's OU Texas in the Big 12 title game. So I think as far as the ceiling, I think it's winning the Big 12. I think the most realistic outcome is they at least make it to the Big 12 title game. I think the floor, I think anything below 9 wins, Brandon, I think anything below 9 wins is and finishing outside the top 3 of the Big 12. I think that is a failure and creates more questions going into the SEC. What do you think?
Yeah, I've said, because I think last year kind of has me a little skittish. I'm not even going to lie, because I think we all expected Brent Venables' defense. They're going to play such good. And then we saw it to start the season. I mean, they were just gangbusters to start the year. Everybody's like, oh my God, they have a defense. I remember listening to everybody on college football game day, and even some of the SEC cats just bowing down to Oklahoma's new defensive prowess under Brent Venables. 3 weeks into the season, they looked like they were a top 5 team. Nobody could score on them. They were they were one of the top 5 teams in sacks, obviously in turnovers and tackles for losses. It was exactly what OU fans wanted, and they were getting it.
That
The
Nebraska.
unfortunate part about then K-State happened.
Yeah.
The fourth quarter of K-State happened, and it was awful. They couldn't stop anybody. They had no legs, and they never got them back. And so I'm a little skittish right now to sit here and say, 10, 11 wins. I've said 9-3. My gut says 10 wins. My mind says 9-3 just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to say 10 wins, but I don't feel like super great about it, even with the schedule, just because of what happened last year. Now, I know they want to say competitive depth, competitive depth, competitive depth. How many times we've heard that phrase all fall camp? Yeah. They use it for every position. We now have competitive depth now. We didn't have that last year. That's kind of the bullet point that they're going to push in the narrative. They're going to push all off season until we see it on the field. And it's to keep the momentum going, obviously. But I don't know. I'm with you on the 10-2. I think with that schedule, if they don't hit 10-2, something is horribly, horribly wrong. Horribly wrong at this point. And we have people in the chat, and I expect nothing less from this person to say 8-4. But I promise you, if he goes 8-4, oof, the seat is going to get mighty hot in the Switzer Center.
There is, not to cut you off, Brandon, but there are. Look, and here's the thing: this year is hard to predict, given how disappointing last year was. 6-7 doesn't look good. It doesn't matter who's coach. When you're at the University of Oklahoma, 6-7 doesn't look good. The reason why I am more optimistic isn't just the talent that they've gotten during the offseason. It's the fact that so many of those games were close, and you'd like to think some of those losses were close. You'd like to think Brent Venables and this coaching staff figures out a way to remedy that. They've talked about wanting to play more guys. That was one of the first things Brent Venables said at Big 12 Media Days. They're going to play more young guys. They're going to be willing to live with more mistakes because a lot of those losses stem from fourth quarter fatigue. That's what bit them. They were up against West Virginia going into the fourth quarter, a game they absolutely should have won. They had chances against Kansas State. They could have beat Florida State. So all that being said, I can see why anybody would say 8-4. But to me, like you mentioned, Brandon, the schedule plus OU knows what its issues are. So I really do think it's not being wildly optimistic to say 10 wins. And I think if they don't get to 10 wins, unless there's horrible health issues, I do think that's a real problem. That is a real thing for concern of this team. Let's not say 10 wins. If they finish below 9 wins and outside the top 3, I think that is a real thing for concern because this coaching staff presumably fixed the issues, the depth issues they had in the offseason. They know what their problems were last year and should be able to better manage them.
Yeah, and I think people are, when I say the seat being hot, I'm not saying like he's going to be threatened to be fired. I'm just going to say that going into the SEC, the pressure will be on him to win more in year 3. Because if he doesn't, and say they go 8-4 to 9-3, like it's almost like people have forgot the Gary Gibbs situation. They did this 8-4, 9-3, 8-3, 8-3, 9-3, and then finally 6-6. This is Oklahoma. Like the fact that people are sitting there going 8-4 is not going to do anything to anybody. What are we talking about? It's Oklahoma. You need to expect greatness. That's what this program's been about forever. And us in the media, that's what we expect. If the fans are going to sit there and say 8-4 isn't going to make anybody's seat a little hotter, then why? You are essentially Oklahoma State. You are Nebraska. Everybody says you're the next Nebraska. You are now Nebraska. If that's what the fan base thinks, you are now Nebraska. If that's what it, you can't do that. You can't. You've got to win 10, 9 to 12 wins every year, and I think that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No, Brandon, I agree. And here's the thing: it's not even just the fact that it's the University of Oklahoma. This team has talent. This team absolutely has talent on both sides of the ball. Again, I don't think the defense is going to be amazing. I think the goal should be to be average because that would be a huge step up from last year. But outside of Texas, Brandon, outside of Texas, which again, Texas could fail and bomb like they have almost every year for 15 years. But on paper, talent wise, outside of maybe Texas, who has better talent on this roster than Oklahoma? I think that's where the 8 wins would be disappointing because this team's compared to the rest of the Big 12 and the easy schedule OU has, relatively easy schedule OU has. 8 wins is too few for a team, not only of the pedigree of Oklahoma, but the talent that's on this roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, let's get to a couple of super chats because I think you'll like them, Jesse. I want to thank Case and Holsley, Jesse equal dog, P count for Julie, and then obviously kill back first. In 16 seasons, Switzer's Sooners lost one game decided by 3 points or less. That's an interesting stat, actually. Very interesting stat. I also know that Switzer went 8-4 like 2 years in a row. And I believe it was going into the 84 season where he was like on the hot seat. And they ended up playing essentially back then for a national title. And we all know that the Sooner Schooner, the penalty that they got against Washington in the Orange Bowl cost them a national title. They could have very easily been back-to-back champs in 84 and 85 had they just not gotten that penalty. That's something to think about as well. There's been a long line of just blunders that have cost OU natties over the years. It's pretty bad, man. Pretty bad. All right. Let's get to some fall camp surprises for you. You've been at almost every practice. You've been at every media scrum afterwards in the post practice. What are some of the things that you've heard that has been a surprise to you as far as maybe defensively and then maybe on the offense as well?
Yeah, I don't know if anything has particularly surprised me other than, and here's the thing, the tough part about trying is when you're talking to people on the record and off the record, you still have to kind of sift through, okay, what are the narratives that the players and coaches are trying to push? And then what are the real nuggets of information you can glean from these availabilities? And that's hard to tell. It takes a while to be able to tell that. I will say, I think the defensive line is the main thing everybody's concerned about. It's the thing everybody should be concerned about, considering how bad the play was there last year. I'm actually more optimistic about the defensive line now than I was before fall camp started. I think everybody has raved about Deshaun Terry. Sorry. I think everybody has raved about him. And when you're walking on the practice field, Brandon, it's just clear the team simply didn't have people like him on that defensive line last year. His speed, his quickness, his size. The team just didn't have people like that last year. So I do think that I'm more now. This defensive line still has a lot of ground to make up. There's still a lot of progress to be made, but maybe one surprising thing for me, I feel a little bit more optimistic about the defensive line. I think if one thing surprised me, I think we're going to see a lot of young guys this year, Brandon. I think we're going to see young guys play on the defensive line, whether it's PJ Adebawore or R. Mason Thomas. I think we're going to see young guys at linebacker. I mean, we know Danny Stutzman and Jaron Kanek, who's a young guy, but we knew Jaron Kanek was going to play. I think we're going to see a lot of Kobe McKenzie. I think we're going to see a decent amount of Kip Lewis. And then the secondary, I think we're going to see a lot of Peyton Bowen. I think Makari Vickers and Josiah Wagner are making more progress in fall camp than I expected. So if there's anything maybe defensively that has surprised me, it's that, it's easier now than 3 or 4 weeks in the season, but I think we're going to see a lot of young guys, Brandon. I don't know. What do you think about
that? Yeah, no, obviously I think the young guys are going to they have to, the young guys got to play. I think, like you said, Deshaun Terry is a guy, I wouldn't necessarily call him young, but he's new to the roster. He's going to come in. He's going to make a difference. I love the move of Jonah Laulu into the inside. Love it. The fact that he's put on like 23 pounds, I think they say that he's faster. I think that is a big deal moving forward. I think another you named Josiah Wagner, Makari Vickers. Look, they're battling. I think at the end of the day, you're still going to have Woody Washington and Gentry Williams as your starters, but I think they're more athletic and there's a higher football IQ at the cornerback spot than they had even previously, just depth wise. No, I get that they had really good athletes last year at corner, and corner wasn't like a huge issue. It was more or less safety. It was more or less just getting pressure on the quarterback. So I don't want to point any of the fingers at the cornerback spot because I don't think that was a major issue, but I do think you get better the second you add Gentry Williams there. And look, I understand they at the end of last year, I would even say the cornerback position was probably the best spot on the team as far as the defensive side of the ball goes at the end of last year. So it's weird to say that I think they're going to be better long term, but I do. I think they are. I think you've got better athletes. You've just got a higher football IQ coming in there. And then when you add what you have in the secondary and the safety spot, I love Billy Bowman. I think Reggie Pearson is going to be he's a headhunter. The one thing I will say, and I said this last week, is that overall they've got to get more consistent in the run fits and tackling in space. That is a big deal for them. If you're going to help the defensive line and you're going to help the front seven as a safety, filling your run fits the way that it's supposed to be done is huge. It's huge. It's almost paramount because you're the last line of defense. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here. And if you can't wrap up, you're going to succumb to the big play way too much. And I think that's where you're going to see it get a lot better. They're going to be better tacklers. And then at the same time, when you add Peyton Bowen to that mix, you had obviously Robert Spears Jennings. You had even Key Lawrence. I think Key Lawrence gets a bad rap, and I don't want to sit here and say that it's not warranted because I think some of the time it is, obviously. But he also makes plays. He's also a really good athlete. I think there was a lot of complacency, and I hate saying that last year because there wasn't depth. So the guys that started, they knew their ass wasn't coming out of the game. They knew it. Screw up, they're going to stay in because it didn't matter because there was nobody behind them that could push them. That is not the case anymore. Far from it, actually. And I think when you look at the front seven, like you said, I think the fact that you're going to get to see R. Mason Thomas a lot more, the fact that you have Rondell Bothroyd, the top edge rusher in the transfer portal, and you got him. That's huge. You add that with Trace Ford. Everybody knows what Trace Ford can be when he's healthy. They saw it when he was at Oklahoma State. He was a problem. And then, obviously, the interior, like I said, Jonah Laulu, Dejon Terry. When Jordan Kelly isn't a starter, he's a really good backup. But now that he's not a starter, I think that shows you the strides they're making on the interior. And that's huge. And so as Sooners Cowboys just said, they were 118th in total defense last year. They can't get much worse. There's only way to go is up. And up in a negative, obviously down in numbers is positive in this scenario. So I love it. Offensively, though, we've heard about Andrew Anthony. I think we all expected him to come in and play a lot, but outside of, I guess, him, what are some other names that you've heard on offense? Before we get to recruiting, we'll cover recruiting, guys, here in just a second. Before we get to that, let's cover the offense. What was a surprise to you as far as what you've heard during fall camp? You're muted.
Oh, my bad. I don't know if it's a surprise. But Nick Anderson is a name I continue to hear. And not only continue to hear, but see real progress on the field. I mean, I think the second time we got to see practice, Nick Anderson is running first reps and individual drills alongside, Jalil Farouk and Drake Stoops and Gavin Freeman, who, again, I think there's more and more evidence to suggest Gavin Freeman, they're going to really try to get him on the field, even though he plays, he and Drake overlap a little bit, but I think we're going to see a lot of Gavin Freeman. But Nick Anderson, now, it's not a surprise in the sense that he brings much needed size, right? I mean, 6'4". Nobody denies the athleticism, but I think he was a questionable player coming into the season, considering all the injuries he dealt with last year. He barely played, but to see him running alongside the two veterans in practice, everybody knows Drake Stoops and Jalil Farouk are going to start. But to see Nick Anderson getting real reps, he's a guy. I mean, I talked to Drake Stoops about him, who said, I mean, I think Nick Anderson sees an opportunity for himself and is seizing it. That's what Drake said. And I think coming into the offseason, I thought Angelo Anthony's going to be that third starter, and he very well might be. But I said that from a place of, well, it's easy. He has experience on the field. I think Nick Anderson, regardless if he starts or not, is going to see a lot of playing time. And I think personally, I was higher on Jaden Gibson coming into the offseason. But I think Nick Anderson, from everything I've heard, everybody I've talked to, I think he's a guy that they not only like, I think he's a guy that they're really going to rely on a lot. And I think that is a little surprising how fast he's maybe pushed his way up the depth chart at wide receiver.
Yeah, no, I like that. Nick Anderson is a guy, people, first off, Jason, you're right. Kelvin Gilliam is going to have a big breakout year. Jason said that in the chat, and I totally agree. He did slip my mind. Todd Bates just raves about Kelvin Gilliam every time he talks about him. I like the Nick Anderson. Everybody keeps asking about, Petaway. And they keep saying that. I'm not sure he's going to get starter reps to begin with. I think it's going to be something as the season moves along. He's still learning everything. He's still learning the offense. He's still doing the things that most freshmen, and having the ups and downs that most freshmen have. It's not really a surprise, man. I think because we've heard about him so much, but I'm going to go with Gavin Freeman just because so he was out at the Carl Albert game the other day, and I talked to him and his dad for a little bit. And I have to tell you, it was when Heritage Hall was scrimmaging Carl Albert and a bunch of other guys. I have to tell you, I will be shocked if he's not the punt returner. I just will. Like, I keep hearing that over and over and over. And even today, when we asked Billy Bowman who the guy was to watch at wide receiver slot returner, he said Gavin Freeman, and they call him G Freaky because they said he's so explosive and he makes so many plays. So, and I talked to somebody earlier this week that was like, man, if that's the best player they had, there's something wrong. And I think there's some truth and some validity behind the fact that people struggle to wrap their heads around. I think what was the wide receiver for Clemson back in the day that was so good? The little slot that was so good. Do you remember? Played for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I just went blank. Yeah.
I know. I did.
Yeah.
Too.
Anyway, somebody in the chat will tell us. Yeah. Anyways, he didn't get a lot of respect either. He's slight. He's not real twitchy. Hunter Renfrow, by the way. Thank you.
Hunter Renfrow.
Thank you, Rage. Yeah, Hunter Renfrow. He's a more explosive Hunter Renfrow. Just a thicker, more explosive Hunter Renfrow. And to me, and I know that is this racist type deal because he's a white guy. He plays a slot, not real big. But it's true. Everybody looks at him like, I don't know. And then he goes out there and he does, like the very first time he touched the ball last year, touchdown. And it wasn't just an easy touchdown. The dude broke like 3 tackles and spun out of 2. It was pretty. He made a diving, beautiful catch later on in the season.
It was against Kansas, 40 yards,
Yeah,
set up a touchdown. It was a beautiful
beautiful.
catch.
I mean, like he is just going to be somebody that I think he's going to earn people's respect. And I think that's it. Like the team thinks everything about him. They think he is going to be this star, right? And even when I talk to people that are super knowledgeable about football, they're like, there's no way he can be the best wide receiver. And to me, I'm like, why? Because if you've watched his high school film, every time I watch it, I don't care if he played 3A football in Oklahoma. I don't care. What his high school football film looked like was absurd. The reason why he didn't get more pub is because he played at a private 3A school in Oklahoma. Anywhere, if he was playing, doing what he did in Texas, he'd have been a top 250 player in the country. And that's not an over exaggeration. That's a fact. So I think he is going to surprise. I don't think he's going to surprise OU fans. I think he's going to surprise the nation. And I love the fact that his nickname is G Freaky. And I think that's probably more than anything. I want to be able to say G Freaky a lot on a podcast. Just for my own, just because it sounds funny. All right. You got 10-2. We named some surprises. Is there a world, before we get into recruiting, is there a world where Jackson Arnold, in your opinion, Jackson Arnold, without injury, I want to say without injury, because there's a lot of fans that still believe that's the case. We need to put the nail in the coffin right here, right now. Is there a world that happens without an injury that he becomes a starter?
I have
And
gone
if
on.
so, when?
I have gone on the
Nostradamus.
This is a complicated question because I'm going to put it, or a complicated answer because I'm going to put it in a sentence that's going to make people think certain things, and I'm going to give more context as I say this. I think if Jackson Arnold takes over as the starting quarterback at any point in the season, that is a bad thing, not a good thing. There's a couple of different reasons for that. One, I think Jackson Arnold is genuinely impressing people around the program, and that's not a given. You got to remember how young this kid is, the expectations around him. Jeff Lebby on signing day 8 months ago said he's the future face of Oklahoma. He's an 18-year-old kid. In the spring, he should have still been in high school. He is progressing. Brent Venables said he throws players open. He is undoubtedly going to be the starting quarterback for Oklahoma for several years. However, I think this year is really unique. You go 6-7 last season. When you do that at the University of Oklahoma, it causes all sorts of questions. And I think Dillon Gabriel is a sensitive topic in that I think a lot of fans were frustrated with him, and I understand that. Dillon Gabriel wasn't perfect. However, Dillon Gabriel is a good quarterback. He needs to improve in a couple of key areas this year. But I think considering the amount of youth that OU is going to play on both sides of the ball, quarterback is so hard. It's such a hard position to play, especially at a major D1 school like OU. Dillon Gabriel has experience in Jeff Lebby's system. I think he'll be better this year. And again, going back to what I said earlier, I think if Jackson Arnold plays, or I think if that ever were to happen, I think it would probably be more likely because Dillon Gabriel is struggling and less because Jackson Arnold is just proving to be that guy. Even if Jackson Arnold continues to progress, the way he'll play is if Dillon Gabriel struggles. And if Dillon Gabriel struggles, that's bad for the entire team. So I don't think it's impossible, but I think fans have to be patient. Jackson Arnold's time is coming. It's coming very soon. But this year, with some improvement, Dillon Gabriel needs to be the starting quarterback. He's seen a ton of football. He's comfortable in Jeff Lebby's system. Some improvement is needed, but he's the right guy this year. Jackson Arnold's time will come.
Yeah, I agree that it wouldn't be that means something awful happened during the season for Dillon Gabriel not to be the starter. On that same note, I think you said something like everybody has the reasons for them being a little bit upset over the Dylan Gabriel stuff last year and some of the things that happened, whether it was in the TCU game prior to him being injured, which I think something we need to remember during that game. Oklahoma was about to make it, I think it was 10-13 if Jaden Gibson catches that pass on fourth down because he just walks into the end zone where Dylan rolls around, rolls out to his left, hits Jaden Gibson on that backside corner, just wide open. All he had to do was turn around, catch it, turn around, and walk 10 yards in the end zone. And the dude just dropped it. And obviously turnover and downs. And next thing you know, now they're pressing, and that's kind of what caused the injury last year. Dylan started to press and do things that he normally didn't do. Now I think they're going to run him more, which I think is going to make him more fun for the fans to watch. I also think he followed absolute greatness. Like, you have to understand, for 7 straight years, there was absolute greatness at quarterback. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, 2020 version of Spencer Rattler, and then Caleb Williams. I mean, like, do remember that Spencer Rattler, didn't he win like 18 straight games or something like that before he got pulled? Or they were still winning. They still had the streak going. When he win like 14 in a row and they finally pulled him? Something to that extent, I can't remember. But you see what I'm saying? Like, that's hard to follow. That's hard to follow. And so the expectation of Oklahoma is, if you're the quarterback, you got to be perfect like those guys were. Now, obviously, sometimes when you drop 8 against those young quarterbacks, like with Spencer and Caleb, it confused them a little bit. But those two used their legs. That's something Dylan did not do very much last year. But when he did, he was really good at it. And I think that's what made fans so frustrated. Like, just run, dude, run. Well, they didn't have the depth last year. And there was we saw why they didn't want him running. This year, as you said, I don't think they're going to have an issue with him running because they're going to be like, well, we got that dude right behind him that's pretty damn good. And so now I think here's the caveat to that. You're not going to be able to see how good Jackson can be, because if Dylan gets injured, which causes Jackson to go in, what makes Jackson so great is his feet. His arm is amazing, but it's what he does with his feet that makes him so deadly. He's a high 4'5", 4'6" guy at 215, 18 pounds. And you're going to have that taken away from him, because there's no way they're not just going to let him run around and get injured. They're just not. Because guess what's behind Jackson? The same dude you had behind Dylan last year. Just saying. So it's a catch-22 there in what you're doing. So I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you want to ride this thing out with Dylan this year and let Jackson get there, and let, obviously, Michael Hawkins and Brennan and all those guys get in there to build the depth up at the quarterback position, and let obviously Michael Hawkins and Jackson battle it out, which is going to happen next year, obviously. So we'll see. I just don't. To me, I'm all about DG finishing this year out if I'm an Oklahoma fan, because that's probably your best bet for success moving forward this year. Not to exclude. So fans, I want you all to get in here and start asking your recruiting questions, because I'll get to them. Jesse already knows. We talked about this. He's like, yeah, I'm good on the recruiting stuff. So, but yeah, are you nervous about the kicking game at all if you're an Oklahoma fan?
I am, certainly, at least a little bit. I didn't get to spend a ton of time around Zach Schmidt today, but I mean, yeah, certainly, because I mean, Zach Schmidt was near the bottom of the conference in kicking last year. That's not a knock on him.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were a couple of moments that weren't necessarily his fault, but field goal kicking,
Yeah, Costa,
field goal kicking and special teams as a whole was an area of weakness for this program last year. So that's not to say it can't be better. It's not to say Zach Schmidt with another year under his belt can't be better. But yeah, I'd be at least a little bit worried. West Virginia game specifically. Now, there were a lot of issues in that West Virginia game, but special teams, field goal kicking really cost them that game. So I'd be a little worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and obviously you see a boomer from Michael Patterson McDonald's father, Larry McDonald, in the chat right now. So what's going on, Larry? I was actually on the phone with him before we got on here. Um, yeah, I don't know. Remember, guys, get your questions in, whether it's super chat or whatnot. We'll try to get to all of them. Um, so I agree. I think kicking cost Oklahoma at least 2 ball games last year. Like if you could hit a couple of field goals, like seemed to be a chip shot. Um,
Texas Tech. That was another one I didn't
yeah,
mention.
man, you're not 6-7. You're 7-6, or maybe 8-5 by the end of the like. There's a real like, and then we're not talking about all this right now. Like if Oklahoma was 8-5 last year, yeah, people would be pissed. But I think recruiting is a lot easier to sell 8-5 than 6-7. I'm sorry, it just is. Like that's just the facts. So, all right, real quickly before we get out of here, this is going to be. Oh, all right, did I go away there for a second?
No, you're good.
No. Okay. All right. My camera just kind of like went off for a second. All right. Real quickly, there's a couple of questions about the latest on Bricks. Look, and I'm talking about the 2024 4-star offensive lineman Grant Bricks. Um, everybody has questions about him lately. A lot of people thought maybe he would decide before the season. So if something is going to go down before the season, obviously it's got to happen. It's got to happen within the next 12 days or so. And I think Oklahoma and Nebraska seem to be battling this thing out quite. It's just it's a very deep competition right now. If you're Nebraska, you feel good for a couple of reasons. One, location, location, location. This kid is a country boy. This kid is all about the country culture. Nebraska, yeah, it's in a city of like 200,000 people. Norman's in a metro area of almost 2 million. So there's a stark contrast of cultures there, right? Nebraska is more of an agricultural school than Oklahoma is. Oklahoma doesn't have much ag, period, at the University of Oklahoma. So there's that as well. But when you get to the development side of things, Dad, Grant, love Coach Beanbo. They love the fact that he's a no nonsense guy. They love the fact that his track record of building guys up, whether they come from small town stock to big city. Coach Beanbo relates to all those guys. I think if I was going to equate one person that has a similar personality to Grant Bricks, I would sit here and say Ben Powers. And I say that because they're quiet, they're to themselves. And those type of guys tend to gravitate towards Coach Beanbo. And that's why Oklahoma's in the position they are right now. Now, I'm not saying Oklahoma is going to land him, because I think I think they lead, but if I say they lead, it's by the slightest of margins over Nebraska right now. Like, I would still pick them if I had to pick, but that's just because you're making me pick between two teams, if that makes sense. I'm not really, I get K-State is still there. I get they're still trying to battle, and I'm not going to write K-State off. But right now, for what I'm hearing, is Oklahoma, Nebraska. Nebraska seems to feel good. Oklahoma seems to feel good. There's a chance he takes a visit or two before he decides. If he doesn't decide before the season, I was told there's a chance he does get back to Nebraska and Oklahoma before a decision's made, but nothing is certain. I think we're going to know where his head is at in the next 12 days. So if he doesn't decide before the season, this thing could stretch all the way into October, obviously. And if you're Oklahoma, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you get to show what you are now, like the difference. Obviously, Oklahoma's offensive line was really good last year, and they developed a first and a third rounder. So that was good. But if you have a chance to, obviously, with Guyton to be another first rounder, they've got another couple of guys that could end up being drafted fairly high this year on the line as well. Just to show what Bedenbaugh's developed, I think that also could be work in Oklahoma's favor because we don't know what Nebraska is going to be. I mean, Rule's first year at Baylor, they were 0-12 or something, like 1-11, something to that extent. Like, we don't know what they're going to be. We get that he's a culture guy and that Rule's going to build that program up. But year one has never been good, no matter where he's at, has never been good. So that could work in Oklahoma's favor. Again, but if you had me pick right now between everybody, I'd pick Oklahoma, but it's by the slightest of margins. Blake Wilson, right now with a super chat, asks, "Hey, sorry for being this up, but I really think Williams Nwaneri is going to flip to Oklahoma." Again, what transpired last week, 3 days after he announced to Oklahoma or to Missouri, I can't say you're crazy, but here's what I'm going to say is I know a lot of people believe that's going to happen in the Switzer Center. They haven't given up, is what I'm saying. Like, they have not given up. They are still recruiting the crap out of him. But my deal is if you chose to go somewhere because of the NIL, how does that change between now and December? So I'm not there yet. I feel like that could take place, but I'm not there yet. Let's get up here. Thank you, Chad Foster, for the $5. Thank you so much. I know there's going to be some David Stone questions. All right, yeah, there's a bunch. All right, let's just talk about it. Let's get it out of the way before we get out of here. All right, David Stone. Miami's charging. We all know it. We all know there's people around him that like Florida. There's people around him. Is OU dead in the water for Stone, Jason? Thank you for the $10. Well played. Well played. Well played on the words there, bud. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think Oklahoma's dead in the water by any stretch of the imagination. I think that Oklahoma is in a good spot. I would still pick Oklahoma. I don't know, man. My allergies is killing me. I don't know, man. Like, I think it has to do with a lot of gun shyness. But you hear all this Miami buzz, and I think when I look at all the Miami buzz, like, they've been buzzed for several OU recruits this year. Obviously, most recently, Devon Mitchell, right? Everybody said, "Oh, he's going to end up going to Miami. He's going to go to Miami." Oklahoma's out of it now, or they're trailing Miami, and the whole time we're hearing on our end, it's Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Oklahoma. And it got close from what I was told, but at the end of the day, he chose his heart, which was Oklahoma, and that hasn't been really the only player that Oklahoma has battled with when it comes to that stuff. I think another player that obviously Oklahoma went head to head with was Jaden Jackson. Had Oklahoma, Miami. I'm trying to think of all the Ohio State, Texas, like all those teams, and obviously he chose Oklahoma. I think another player that James Nesta had Miami and North Carolina up against him, and he chose Oklahoma. So Oklahoma's been doing really well against Miami as of late. I think if they did beat Oklahoma here, though, Miami, that would trump everything that's already happened for David Stone, just because David Stone is such an essential piece of this class. And so I still believe Oklahoma is the leader. Yes, Miami's making a run. Yes, there's people around him that prefer Miami, the location, all that type of stuff. People that are super close to him. And I'm not going to get into this, who is it and all that. Most people know who it is. So there's really no reason for me to even go there. But At the end of the day, when I talk to sources, everybody still goes, I still think it's going to be Oklahoma. Now, nationally, there's buzz that people think it'll be Miami. I don't think so. At least not right now. I would still pick Oklahoma, but we're also 4 days out. We've seen this crap go from Jaden Jackson's a prime example. Miami, Texas, Ohio State all look to be the top picks for him. People weren't even talking about Oklahoma. We were, but nobody else was. And the next thing you know, the 24 hours in advance, I was like, it's going to end up being Oklahoma, isn't it? So this stuff is crazy with elite defensive linemen. We all know it, but Oklahoma has to do it. They have to. They have to land him. If they don't land him, I don't. Jesse, I don't know what. I think I'll retire, honestly, because it will be rough. It will be rough. It will be rough. And I know people don't understand it. They don't understand the Miami deal, but sometimes people are just drawn to certain places. Sometimes people are. I don't. I can't describe it for them. I can't describe it to you guys. Some people are just drawn to certain places and the glitz and the glam, and that's what they want. I think what Oklahoma is leaning on right now is the fact that if you choose Oklahoma and you're an Oklahoma kid, you have NIL the rest of your life. You will be taken care of the rest of your life. And that's facts. Like, look at Billy Sims, even though he's not an Oklahoma guy, he's an East Texas guy. He's taking care of Jason White, Artie Lasher. We've talked about all this, right? Like in past podcasts and lives. All these Oklahoma guys that have businesses that have been taken care of because they're Oklahoma guys, because they play at the University of Oklahoma. In Miami, you're third, fourth on the pedestal. And so that's where it gets really tricky. I know a lot of people are saying he's Miami bound and all that type of stuff. And OU's NIL is trash. Dude, OU's NIL is not trash. Let's make this perfectly clear. OU in their NIL is pretty good, actually. Really good. The difference is OU's they're not willing to break the bank to ruin their locker room. If you are a kid, like David Stone, for example, if you're David Stone and you go in there, and this is hypothetical because this is not a number I've heard. I just want to throw this out as an example. Let's say you're making $800,000 a year compared to everybody else. What do you think is going to happen when he walks in that locker room? Everybody else is making $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, and you're making $800,000. You've never done anything for the university other than be a 5-star. What do you think is going to happen? BB and that staff is not willing to risk that. They're just not. And that's the whole point. They're going to pay. The collectives are going to pay. They're going to take care of them. They're going to do everything in their power to get this thing done. But they're not going to ruin their culture for one guy. Because eventually they're not going to have to do that, period. That's just it. Like, everybody forgets that Clemson, how many stars did they have on that defensive line when they first, how many 4 and 5 stars did they have in that 2015 team that beat Oklahoma in the playoffs to go play for the Natty? How many 4 and 5 stars were on their first national title team? I think their highest class was like 13th or something like that. Leading into that, there wasn't a lot of stars. They developed them. They developed the Grayson Haltons of the world, the Nigel Smiths of the world, right? Like, they took those guys and made them elite. And that's what they're going to have to do. Because, and I'm not saying they're going to miss out on Stone, because I still like Stone. I still like Oklahoma to get Stone. I'm just preparing you guys for, I can't sit there, like, me saying that doesn't change the fact that the kid could choose Miami or Florida or, I don't know, Michigan State or whatever. Like, I'm just saying it. I'm just trying to get y'all to understand 5-star recruiting more than ever is the hardest thing to sift through. And so, as close as this thing seems to be now, everybody still has confidence, though. Like, I haven't seen anybody really waver inside the Switzer Center just yet. So, I think that's at least something at this point. But it is only Monday, and he's announcing on Saturday. So, in the next 5 days, there's going to be a lot of movement. I told you all that with Waneri. It came true. I said, look, the next 48 hours are going to be crazy. You're going to see a lot of movement one way or the other. And it happened. In the next 4 days, you're going to see a lot of movement. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking when I say that, and I know that. But Jesse and I will sit here and tell you, we wish nothing more than for this to happen for you guys, because it is no fun when it doesn't. It's great for business when you guys, when a 5-star chooses Oklahoma. So of course, like, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, all we can do is report what we're told. So anyways. All right. You got anything else, Jesse?
I just cannot wait for football season to get here.
Oh, thank God. Me either. Oh my God.
I just
nobody's even asking about like Peyton Bowen or Devon Jordan or anything. Like, nobody's asking these questions. David Stone. Nigel Smith is going to announce September 9th. He's a top 200 player in the country. What are we doing here? Oklahoma's in a really good spot for him. Bass is announcing on Thursday.
Here's what I'll say, Brandon. Look, recruiting is incredibly important, and I admire so much what you and Parker do. It's important. Fans care about it. It's crucial, all that stuff. But it is important. It is 100% important. But I think this year, even from a recruiting context, this upcoming year for Oklahoma is crucial. I think 2023 is one of the most important football seasons in Oklahoma history. I've said that for months now. And so I think the recruiting stuff is, man, it's tense. There's so much anxiety. There's so much you and Parker are having to sift through. But just don't forget that this football season for OU is incredibly important. With the SEC move on the horizon, with the 6-7 finish last season, if you don't think this year, if you don't think OU contending for a Big 12 title this year is going to have a massive impact on recruiting, you're wrong. Brent Venables and this coaching staff can get through one bad season. They need this season to go really, really well. And I think this season, Brandon, at least in the modern era, is easily one of the most important seasons in OU football history. I really do.
I concur. I think it's huge. You have to have ample momentum going into the SEC. You have to. And I know I see people are asking about Eli Bowen. I think Eli announces in the next 3 weeks. I really do. Like, I can't see it going much further than that. He's got a top 2. We all kind of know it's going to be Oklahoma at this point, unless he chooses to play against his brother for Texas, which I find that hard to believe right now. But And on the Stone thing, I think people are like, well, what about Jaden Jackson? Okay, yeah, I get it. He did recruit Jaden Jackson to Oklahoma. Jaden will tell you that. But at the same time, David will say, well, Jaden's recruiting me to Oklahoma. Okay, so there's a lot of gamesmanship going on here. You just got to kind of sift through all of it and see what happens. This is a lot of brand building. This is a lot of what's going on. When you're a 5-star defensive tackle, 5-star anything, unless Oklahoma got so lucky last year with 2 of the 3. Obviously, the third one was quite dramatic in Peyton Bowen. But Jackson and PJ Adebawore were so easy, so simple. They weren't into the drama. They just wanted to play football and get it over with. But people also tend to forget, right before PJ announces, like the weeks leading up to it, he visited Missouri and Georgia. So it's hard to find them without drama and without brand building. And that's what a lot of this is. Now, again, I still think Michigan State and Miami, particularly Miami, is a major problem here for obvious reasons that we've stated. But I still think Oklahoma in the end, like, there's just so much. Like, it just doesn't make sense at the end of the day. It just doesn't. Especially when you're a kid, if you really are looking to help your family for the rest of your life. And I know Jason Taylor's at Miami. I get the fact that he's there coaching. But he doesn't have the skins on the wall. Like, it even took DeMarco Murray a little bit, right? To get the skins on the wall to be able to recruit to the level he's recruiting. So you got to have the skins on the wall. And nobody has more than Todd Bates unless you're Larry Johnson, right, at Ohio State right now. So it's a lot of gamesmanship. And OU fans, just buckle up and be ready for the ride, because it's going to do this all week long. Just be prepared. Be prepared. But Miami's real. I still like Oklahoma for right now. And I say for right now because it obviously can change. I'm just telling you that's the reality. 5-star recruitment. I still like Oklahoma. As far as Devin Jordan goes, 2024 4-star defensive back out of Tulsa Union. He's going to visit A&M. He's going to visit TCU. He's going to visit Oklahoma this fall. I think TCU and Oklahoma are right there. His coach played for TCU, GA'd at TCU, and I'm talking about his position coach at Tulsa Union. So there's a lot of sway there. There's a lot. He's not pushing there, but there's a lot of comfortability with TCU because of that. And then obviously you have the fact that Friedrich has produced so many Oklahoma kids. His son is actually on the OU staff as a student assistant. So there's comfortability there. I still like Oklahoma. And then obviously when it comes to Danny Okoye, the 2024 4-star defensive end out of Tulsa, Noah homeschool. Tennessee and Oklahoma are at the top. I think some people say Tennessee's a leader. Some people say Oklahoma's a leader. I'm going to go with Oklahoma just because he's an in-state kid. He's going to visit Oklahoma for the first game for an official visit. That's the plan right now. The Oklahoma is trying to push it back a little bit. We'll see if that takes place. He wants to decide in the middle, late October. We'll see if that actually takes place as well. Let's see how many times he gets to Oklahoma before a decision's made. Because I think if he can get to Oklahoma more than once, I think Oklahoma's in a really good position, especially if they win the way we think they're going to. So Oklahoma wasn't in this for the longest time, by the way. So that's good news that Oklahoma is at least contending with Tennessee at this point. And then finally, Mongo. Awesome, man. Appreciate you. You tried to sneak this one past me with a Monday live stream. Shout out to Jason Freeman. Yep. Former player Jason Freeman, Gavin Freeman's father. He always does that. He names a former player. Hey, thank you, Mongo. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Olipop. I want to thank Olipop for being our sponsor. If you're not subscribed to OU Insider, do it now. Like, we're going to have a bunch of news on Stone, a bunch of football news. It's 12 days away, man. Season's rolling around. We're going to be there covering it for you guys, head to toe, front to back, all that stuff, man. We have got it covered for you. Going to do a lot of all 22 breakdowns. We're going to do a lot of podcasts, a lot of video breakdowns, some interviews. We're going to do a lot of just our takeaways, some things we know, some source stuff. All that's going to take place during the season. And it's already taken place over on OU Insider right now. Obviously, we'll also have a bunch of recruiting stuff as Oklahoma looks to close down the 2024 class. If you're not subscribed to this channel, do so. We are almost to 11,000. Almost to 11,000. Try to get us over the hump before the season starts. And obviously go to any one of the podcast platforms. Give us a 5-star, please. Rate us. Give us a good rating, and make sure you guys are listening, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Audible, Amazon, all that type of stuff. Please go there and give us a good rating. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Olipop. For Spencer Forsythe on the board, for our man, Jesse Crittenton, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.